If someone handed you $10,000 today and said you can't touch it for 30 years, where would every single dollar go? That question kept me up at night for a long time. Not because I didn't have options, because I had too many. There are over 3,000 ETFs on the market right now. Everyone has a favorite, everyone has an opinion, and most of those opinions are loud, confident, and wrong. So today I'm going to do something I don't usually do. I'm going to show you my exact plan. Not a list of good ETFs, not a general strategy, my specific 5 funds, my exact dollar amounts, and the math of what happens if you invest $10,000 once and never touch it again. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which 5 ETFs I'd choose, how I'd split every dollar across them, and what that $10,000 could realistically become in 10, 20, and 30 years. And the part that surprises most people, the 5th ETF, the one I'd put the least money into, might be the reason the whole plan works. Quick note, I'm not a financial advisor or government employee. Everything here is for educational purposes only. For your specific situation, always check with a qualified professional. These are my personal choices and my reasoning. Your plan should fit your life. Now, my first $3,000 goes into the one ETF that's recovered from every single crash in its 30-year history. $3,000 into SPY, the foundation. The first place I'd put money is SPY, the SPDR S&P 500 ETF, and I'd put $3,000 there. That's 30% of the whole portfolio. Here's why SPY gets the biggest slice. It holds the 500 most profitable companies in the United States. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Nvidia, Berkshire Hathaway. These aren't startups. These are businesses that print cash through every market cycle. Over the past 10 years, SPY has returned about 15.3% per year with dividends reinvested. A $10,000 investment a decade ago is worth roughly $42,500 today. Since it launched in 1993, it's averaged about 10.8% per year, through booms, through crashes, through everything in between. Now, you might be thinking, why not QQQ? It's done better, right? It has, but roughly 60% of QQQ is concentrated in tech and communications. When sentiment shifts, the drops are sharp and deep. QQQ is an accelerator, it's not a foundation. What about VTI? It owns the entire US market, over 4,000 stocks, maximum diversification, right? Sure, but you're also holding thousands of tiny companies that add noise without meaningfully lifting returns. Diversified, yes, but diluted too. SPY sits in the sweet spot, broad enough to survive, concentrated enough to compound. And here's the number that matters most. SPY has recovered from a 55% crash in 2008, a 34% crash in 2020, a 19% drop in 2022, every single time. That's not luck, that's structural. So the foundation is set, but $3,000 in SPY pays you almost nothing in income right now. The yield is about 1.2%. The next $2,500 fixes that, and the income story here is the part most people get completely wrong. $2,500 into SCHD, the income engine. My second pick is SCHD, the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF. I'd put $2,500 here. That's 25% of the portfolio. SCHD doesn't chase the highest yield, it chases the most durable one. It holds 100 blue-chip companies that have raised their dividends for at least 10 straight years. Names like Texas Instruments, Chevron, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, United Health. These are businesses with real cash flow that keep growing. Here's where most people go wrong with income investing. Here's the myth. Higher yield means more income. Here's the truth. A 3.3% yield growing at 12% per year will crush an 11% yield that shrinks by 3.6% per year. One builds wealth, the other quietly bleeds it. SCHD's current yield is about 3.3%. That sounds modest, but its dividend has grown roughly 5-fold since 2011. The dividend growth rate has averaged about 12% per year. At that pace, your income doubles roughly every 6 years. On a $2,500 investment, year 1 pays you about $82 in dividends. By year 10 with reinvestment, that grows to over $250. By year 20, north of $800. And by year 30, the income alone could exceed your original $2,500 investment every single year. The expense ratio, just 0.06%. That's $6 per year on a $10,000 investment. Almost nothing leaves your pocket. And here's the thing that builds the most trust. SCHD has never cut or frozen its dividend, not in 2020 during the pandemic, not in 2022 when markets dropped 18%, not once since launch. So now you have the foundation and the income engine, but there's a risk hiding in this portfolio that 90% of investors ignore, and the next $1,000 is specifically designed to protect against it. $1,000 into IHF, the crash insurance. My third pick is the smallest allocation, $1,000 into IHF, the iShares U.S. Healthcare Providers ETF. That's just 10% of the portfolio. I'll be straight with you, IHF has had a rough stretch. Its 5-year total return is only about 3%. It went negative in 2023 and 2024. Its expense ratio at 0.38% is the highest fund in this portfolio. So why would I still put $1,000 here? Because this isn't the position I'm counting on for growth. This is the position that keeps me from panic selling SPY and VGT during the next 30% crash. People don't stop needing health insurance during a recession. They don't cancel hospital visits. They don't stop filling prescriptions. The demand for healthcare is non-discretionary. It doesn't disappear when markets fall. IHF holds companies like United Health, CVS, Cigna, and Elevance Health. These are businesses that collect premiums and process claims no matter what the economy does. Since inception in 2006, IHF has averaged about 8.8% per year. Not spectacular, but that's not its job. Its job is to hold the floor when everything else drops. The biggest threat to a buy and hold portfolio isn't a bad ETF. It's you selling a good one at the wrong time. That's what this $1,000 is protecting against. Before I show you the last two picks, drop a comment right now. If you had $10,000 to invest today and couldn't touch it, would you go all US or would you spread it globally? I read every single comment. My fourth pick might surprise you, $1,500 into FNDF, the Schwab Fundamental International Equity ETF. That's 15% of the portfolio. Most investors are 90% or more invested in one country, the United States. And I get why. It's been the strongest equity market for decades. But here's what people forget. Between 2000 and 2010, the S&P 500 returned essentially zero, a full decade of nothing. If you were 100% invested in the US during those 10 years, your money didn't grow at all. Meanwhile, international markets had their own long runs where they significantly outperformed. And right now, in 2026, international stocks are outperforming the US for the second straight year. FNDF has returned over 40% in the past 12 months alone. Here's what separates FNDF from a standard international index fund. It doesn't weight stocks by market cap, it weights them by fundamentals, sales, cash flow, dividends, book value. It picks companies that are actually profitable, not just popular. FNDF holds nearly 900 companies: Samsung, Shell, Toyota, Total Energies. Its top 10 positions make up only about 14% of assets. Compare that to IHF at 73% or VGT at 59%. This is the most diversified fund in the portfolio. The numbers. A 10-year annualized return of about 11%, a yield of roughly 2.8%, an expense ratio of 0.25%. It's not the cheapest fund here, but the diversification it adds is worth every fraction of a percent. Most investors would never put all their money in one stock, but they'll put it all in one country. That's the same mistake wearing a different hat. The portfolio is now balanced, diversified, and generating growing income, but there's still $2,000 left, and this last ETF is where the compounding math gets dramatic. $2,000 into VGT, the growth accelerator. My fifth pick is VGT, the Vanguard Information Technology ETF, $2,000, that's 20% of the portfolio. VGT is concentrated by design. NVIDIA, Apple, and Microsoft alone make up roughly 45% of the fund. Its top 10 holdings are about 59% of total assets. That's not a flaw, that's the point. Over the past 10 years, VGT has returned about 24% per year. $10,000 invested a decade ago is worth roughly $86,000 today. Since inception in 2004, through the financial crisis, through 2022's tech sell-off, it's averaged about 15% per year.
Now, I need to be honest about something. Some people will tell you $10,000 in VGT could reach $2 million over 30 years. That number uses the last decade's rate and projects it for 3 full decades. That's not how I'd plan. The more honest number, using VGT's full history since 2004, projects the $2,000 VGT slice growing to roughly $132,000 over 30 years at about 15% per year. Still incredible, and that's on just $2,000. The volatility is real. VGT dropped nearly 30% in 2022. It fell over 40% in 2008. This is not a fund you watch every day without nerves. That's why it gets 20% and not 50%. You want VGT in the portfolio. You don't want it to be the portfolio. Let me show you what this looks like with a real example. Meet Jason. He's 38, lives in Denver, works in project management. 10 years ago, he put $10,000 into these same 5 ETFs using this exact split. His $3,000 in SPY turned into about $12,700. His $2,500 in SCHD became roughly $8,400, and it's now paying him over $275 per year in growing dividends. His $1,500 in FNDF grew to about $4,700. His $1,000 in IHF held steady at around $2,300, and his $2,000 in VGT turned into roughly $17,200. Total portfolio value, approximately $45,300, from a single $10,000 investment, and Jason didn't do anything special. He picked 5 funds, set up dividend reinvestment, and ignored every headline for 10 years. That's the entire strategy. The complete plan, $10,000 across 30 years. But Jason's only 10 years in. The real power shows up in years 20 and 30. Compounding doesn't grow in a straight line, it accelerates. Here's the complete allocation one more time. $3,000 in SPY, the foundation, 30%. $2,500 in SCHD, the income engine, 25%. $2,000 in VGT, the growth accelerator, 20%. $1,500 in FNDF, the global edge, 15%. $1,000 in IHF, the crash insurance, 10%. Using conservative historical rates, not the best decade, the full history of each fund, this $10,000 portfolio could grow to roughly $180,000 to $250,000 over 30 years with dividends reinvested. The income stream by year 30 could reach several $1,000s per year. And that's from one investment, made one time, touched 0 times. You don't need to predict the next crash. You don't need to find the next NVIDIA before everyone else. You need 5 solid funds, one afternoon to set them up, and the patience to let 30 years of compounding do what it does. Build the right portfolio once, then do the hardest thing in investing, nothing. If someone you care about keeps asking where to put their money, send them this video. Tell me in the comments which of these 5 ETFs would get your biggest allocation. I want to see how your plan compares to mine. If you're building long-term wealth and want a channel that shows you the real math, not hype, subscribe to this channel. I cover everything that protects and grows your money. And next week, I'm breaking down exactly which account type to hold each of these ETFs in, because where you hold them might matter as much as what you hold.